they could immediately agree. Last night, they didn't. As soon as they heard that Ukraine had accepted it, they launched a heavy bombardment, including a ballistic missile strike on the Ukrainian port at Odessa that killed some people and wrecked a ship. So that was one choice. They didn't do that. They could agree in the next few days. The question is, what will their concessions will they require, and what will the administration ask of them other than agreeing to halt the fighting temporarily? There have been ceasefires in the past. They're easy to break. No one's there to monitor it. If you want to take a little bit more ground, you take it. That's what Russia's done in the past on this. So I think it's a good thing that we're moving forward on this, but we just have to count on the administration putting the right pressure on Russia to get a real ceasefire in place, then something that can be monitored, enforced, and has some security guarantees behind it.
Well, General, it's great to see you again on Bloomberg. The conditions we're hearing that Putin wants include a long-term settlement to the war, Ukraine becoming a neutral nation, reducing its armed forces and ceding the territory that Russia has already taken. Does that sound like reality to you?
It sounds like exactly what Russia wanted when they started at the Istanbul agreements.
Right.
And so they haven't changed their position. No, I don't think Ukraine can accept that. But I think it's important that any agreement be brought back to the people of Ukraine, not something that the president Zelensky can simply sign and say, okay, I've signed it, I'm done. You want me to leave? I'm leaving. And here's the agreement. So it's got to come back through the Ukrainian parliament, the Rada. People have to really understand what it means, and it has to be enforceable.
Well, and that gets me back to the point you were just making a moment ago, General, about monitoring, because we also understand that Russia has conditions around what a peacekeeping force could or should actually look like. In your mind, what kind of force is required to actually keep the peace? Would the UK and France trying to go it alone if Russia were able to tolerate a NATO-aligned nations being present enough?
Well, I don't think that you can get a force in there that has any credibility unless it's a NATO force. It doesn't have to be under NATO. It can be a coalition of the willing. How many does it take? You're not going to get 150,000, that's for sure, because Europe can't do it. But if you put 30 to 40,000 in, if you spread them out along the line, if you have the authorities to monitor what's going on the Russian side, if you can do inspections, for example, if necessary, and if you put penalties in, and if you only gradually release sanctions and calibrate the release of sanctions to Russia's compliance and stretch out the release of sanctions over at least 3 years. That's how long the war's lasted. And if you haven't given up permanent ownership or legal occupation of these provinces in Crimea, because you can't allow borders to be changed by force under international law. So there's a lot of things that have to be done to make this workable, and it's going to be very tough to get Russia to agree to that, I think.
Well, of course, you have unique experience here as Supreme Ally Commander Europe of NATO. Your experience in Kosovo. You actually have a sense of what Europe is capable of here, General. Can you describe that to us?
Well, right now, at least as of when I was in Europe last week, they were hopping mad at the United States. And I don't think they're going to get over this right away. Their question is the United States still a reliable ally? If you're a reliable ally, how could you not side with the victim of aggression and seem to be more friendly with the aggressor? And what does that mean for our security? Because in their view, Ukraine is fighting for Europe's security. And it's got the strongest army in Europe, excluding Turkey. So there's a lot of concern there. Can Europe do more? Yes, but not instantaneously. Could Europe put 15 or 20,000 soldiers? Sure, especially if Poland is willing to put some of its forces up there. But people in Europe are very wary of Mr. Putin. He's made his intentions very clear, and they're under gray zone assault with sabotage and bombings of aircraft and murders of of former intelligence officers and cables cut. They have no illusions about what Mr. Putin's ultimate design might be. Maybe President Trump can change all that, but it's not just Putin. It's 3 centuries of legacy of Russian imperialism, reaching beyond its borders, intimidating, attempting to gain control of neighboring countries. And so everyone in Europe is wary about this. They've relied on the United States, and now that reliance is been put in jeopardy.
Just quickly, General, we only have a minute left here, but how important is it that the U.S. has once again started resharing intelligence with Ukraine and allowing aid flow to continue?
I think it's very important, but we don't know the details of the aid flow. I hope they'll just flush it and put it all in there. But I was told that even before this happened, it had been sort of choked down, so Ukraine wasn't getting much. I don't have the details on that, and I know Ukraine is working to sort of straighten this out. But yes, the intelligence is critical, and so is the U.S. military assistance.